about. It's what you've been talking about all week long. The Miami Heat absolutely getting after it. They rallied from a 13-point deficit with 8 minutes remaining to extend their winning streak to 23 points against the Celtics last night. LeBron James, the go-ahead jumper with 10.5 seconds left. Are the Celtics the biggest threat to the Heat in the East? And Stephen A., you're here. We'll start with you.
I don't blame anybody for feeling that way, particularly based on what you saw last night. What I saw last night was shocking to me. Nobody could have told me that Jeff Green was going to come out of the woodwork and drop 43 on LeBron, D. Wade, and the Miami Heat. You don't see that coming out. This is a capable dude, and we all know that he's capable. He had the heart surgery. He was out the entire year last season. We didn't know whether he'd ever come back from that. But when the Boston Celtics acquired him by moving Kendrick Perkins, you anticipated that he'd be able to do some things because he was supposed to be that third wheel in Oklahoma City. If you remember, it wasn't James Harden and Serge Ibaka. It was KD, it was Russell Westbrook, and it was Jeff Green. But they were smart enough to know they didn't have enough basketballs for all of those guys. His career high was 37 on December 1st, 2010 against the New Jersey Nets. You didn't see this coming. So for him to perform like that, again, you're Doc Rivers, you got cause to pause. You got to rethink things, make sure he becomes a primary offensive option. If he does some things and he's capable of playing this way, of course they are. But right now, I still give that edge to the Indiana Pacers because of what we're talking about in terms of the Miami Heat. Miami Heat can run. They have great athletes. They have the greatest player on the planet as far as I'm concerned, in LeBron James. He's just continuing to prove it that you just can't deny it. But what's their lone impediment? Rebounding, being physical, down low. What's Indiana's strength? Getting physical, making the game ugly, slowing the pace a little bit, banging, making sure you feel their elbows, whether it's David West, whether it's Roy Hibbert and those boys. You're going to feel their presence. Are they good enough to beat Miami? No. Boston could do that if they're hitting shots. But can they punish Miami? That's the thing. Indiana can do that, and that's what makes them tougher.
Okay, so Skip is not here, but that doesn't mean that you won't have a debate on your hands because there are a couple guys here that don't necessarily agree with you, starting with Ryan. Who do you got? The Celtics the biggest threat?
I believe the Celtics are, and I wouldn't have said that probably 4 weeks ago. But Jeff Green has been so good. It wasn't just last night, but it's been this stretch, and it's been awesome to see. It's a good story. That size, 6'9", to finish at the rim, and he's just throwing up these layups on guys that they don't even expect it. For Avery Bradley has been so good on the ball defensively that it's slowing everybody else's offense down. And you could see that happen so many times last night where they're going, okay, in the first half, what's going on here? We're not getting into our set until about 14, 13 seconds left on the shot clock. So as much as more people would probably say the Pacers because of the history and feeling like they're overall a better team than the Celtics, Hibbert was useless in that series last year. They had to get him off the floor. Those high pick and rolls against Wade and LeBron had to get him out of there. And even though Pierce, and I would never be dumb enough to sit here and say Pierce is LeBron James, but there's something there where I think Pierce looks at LeBron and doesn't respect him in a competitive way. You know, he respects him as a player, but doesn't look up to him. Where if it's Paul George having to play against LeBron his third year in, I think there's going to be a spook factor there a little bit more.
You make very valid points, and I can't disagree with them. What I can tell you, however, is this. There's something to be said about learning from your mistakes. Not that it would be good enough to beat Miami, but you have to remember, we're talking playoff basketball. The game slows down. It gets physical. You look at a guy like Rondo, for example. My hesitation about the Boston Celtics strictly evolves around the absence of Rajon Rondo. I think that his game elevates come postseason time.
Absolutely.
And he is a floor leader. He's a floor leader and gets everybody else involved. He is an elite dude on that level. Avery Bradley has emerged as one of the great young defenders in this game. But you have to remember, you're talking about the Miami Heat here. If you're going against the Knicks and Raymond Felton, even if you're going up against Chris Paul and the Los Angeles Lakers, because I consider Chris Paul right now to be the best point guard in the game in terms of his ability to be a floor general. Remember, you play right into the hands of somebody like Avery Bradley, who's a ball hawk and will be all over you. You're the Miami Heat. You know what you do? All right, D-Wade, you don't need to dribble up the ball. Chalmers, you bring it up. Chalmers, you don't bring it up. LeBron, you bring it up. They don't have the prototypical point guard, so they don't have to worry about Avery Bradley the way another team would. And that's why you got to look at the Boston Celtics and say they're not going to have the effect on the Heat the way other teams will. Of course, all of that goes out the window if Jeff Green's dropping 40.
Heat 2-1 against the Celtics this season, coming off that big win last night, coming back from 17-point down in Boston last night. The Indiana Pacers 1-2. They are against the Indiana Pacers this year, but they did have that big win last Sunday in Indiana. I think this Miami Heat team, once again, top of the show, I think they are right now sending a statement to the rest of the league that they are on a mission, not just to repeat, but they want to make a statement that they can be one of the better teams, one of the greatest teams in NBA history. You already got the greatest basketball player on the planet, or even off this planet right now, in LeBron James. And I do think there are players playing off this planet because you saw Space Jam.
Sure.
You saw Space Jam. I know they're out there. LeBron can beat any of the monsters out there. That's how good he is right now. But when the question is asked, who is the greatest threat to the Miami Heat right now in the playoffs? I agree with you. I look at the Boston Celtics possibly as the biggest threat to the Miami Heat, only because it's a rivalry game as well. They always play tough. LeBron, for years, trying to get past the Boston Celtics, even last year, was tough. And when Kevin Garnett comes back, you know, he gets into that playoff attitude and he's getting that lather going and whatnot. It can be huge for the Boston Celtics. However,
Go ahead.
can I throw in a Stephen A. Smith? However,
Right.
really, when you come down to it and you look at it, there is no threat to the Miami Heat.
Not in the East.
In the East. Not this year.
Not in the East.
Not happening. The Heat, well, teams above 500, they got an amazing record. There is not another team in the East that right now has a winning record against teams over 500.
Let me throw this out to you. A couple of things to consider. First time, remember, the Indiana Pacers beat the Miami Heat the first 2 times they met this year. Paul George had 29 first meeting. Second meeting, David West had 30 on 80% shooting from the field. Now, granted, Miami's not the same team now that they were then. And we understand that Miami, top to bottom, are a better team. But the point that I'm trying to make to you is that when you talk about playoff basketball, the way they beat Miami is the way you're supposed to beat Miami. They don't try to do it with flash. They don't try to do it with athleticism. They beat you up. They attack you, and that's what transpired. You have to pay attention to that. When you look at the Boston Celtics, as great as we saw Jeff Green play, remember, KG comes back. Yeah, he can adjust. But at the same time, if he's on the floor, along with Paul Pierce,
But does Jeff Green have that game last night if Kevin Garnett played?
But see, I don't know.
I don't know why he can't, though. That's one of the
it's
most...
But it's not a matter of not being able to in terms of your ability, but when you're on the floor playing together, in terms of spacing, in terms of schemes, you got to think about it from the standpoint that Doc Rivers is going to have to make some adjustments in order for that to be necessary. Now, KG can pull it off.
That hard one we saw last night.
It may not be. It may not be. But we don't know.
Sure.
He hit 5 or 7 threes.
Right.
See, one thing, if you go into the basket, if you dunking on somebody, you got a mid-range game, you posted somebody up, those are plausible things.
Right.
I don't see Jeff Green hit threes all the time.
Right.
So when you hit 3 or 5 or 7, is that not fool's gold? Can we rely on that?
Right.
Those are the question marks, and which is why Indiana does what they always do. Boston did something last night I hadn't seen them do, and that's the difference.
Here's one of the things I love about Boston, though. I think in the playoffs, even though they're older, I think you know what you can expect to get out of KG, right? You can just kind of write it down. You know what to get out of Pierce. Hey, Ray Allen makes some more shots last year. Maybe that team ends up in the NBA Finals, which still seems ridiculous to me. I don't know what I can write down for Paul George in the playoffs. He was really bad in that series.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
I don't know what to write down for Hibbert. David West is a guy I could trust a little bit.
Right.
Granger at this point.
Right.
What, a coin toss even?
Granger was huge from last year in the playoffs.
But we don't know what
and he wasn't afraid of LeBron.
So there are more question marks, although probably a better team than Boston with the Pacers for me.
Right, and I guess for me, I go back to the days of the Knicks with Pat Riley and those guys, and Pat Riley can appreciate this. Michael Jordan and these boys are on a tear. They're winning titles. Pat Riley comes in there. He takes over. What happens? Jordan and the Bulls are already champions. Who does he have? I got Ewing and a bunch of parts nobody cares about. So let me get Anthony Mason and you know, ultimately Xavier McDaniels and the John Starks of the world, and ultimately you get Oakley. And I'm not talking about Larry Johnson. No. Oakley and these boys.
Right.
What happened is Pat Riley said, these boys are elite. It's Jordan. It's Pippen and these boys. But you know something? I got a bunch of nasty, big, nasty dudes up here. We just going to beat you down. And that's why they had to change the game, because the NBA is looking at it and saying, wait a minute, you got games being, the scores are lower, they're getting physical, it's getting ugly out here. We don't want this. This ain't good for the game. But what I'm saying to you is that that's what Pat Riley's strategy was. When I look at the Indiana Pacers, of course they're not as good as those Knicks teams, but I see a team that's disciplined and knowledgeable enough to play within their own selves. They don't lose sight of who they are. If they have to beat you up, they'll beat you up. It's almost like you're getting into a boxing ring. You Floyd Mayweather, you Sugar Ray Leonard, you can box. But you know something? I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to elbow you. You know, I might headbutt you. I'm going to hit your body. I'm going to hit you when we holding each other. I'm going to wear you down. And all of a sudden, you're like, damn, this is getting a little tough up in here. You see, that's what I'm saying. I don't think it'll work.
I don't think it'll
But when
work.
you talk about a playoff strategy in terms of what's tougher to deal with, that's where the Indiana Pacers come in from.
Can't wait to see it. Obviously, when the playoffs start, a little time from now. So you've got the Pacers as the biggest threat. You've got the Celtics, but the biggest threat last night was LeBron James in the air, doing some kind of ridiculous things. Second quarter last night. Have you seen this? The alley-oop, and that's Jason Terry on his back right there, just getting jammed on alley-oop style. LeBron talked about it afterwards.